Mick Gordon is a guy who sampled a chainsaw and a kangling in his OST and even decided to learn Mongolian throat chanting in a Mongolian monastery so he could sing for another of his pieces. Did they think he was the kind of guy who would back down? He learned Mongolian throat singing? No. Are you kidding me?
The video game industry is abundant with contractors and freelancers looking for work. From concept art to music production to voice acting, these individuals float from project to project, rarely being tied down to one company exclusively. And unfortunately, the industry is also rife with instances where these contractors are taken advantage of, either by being denied promised payment for their work, or getting their names scrubbed from the projects they worked on, or by simply being given horrible working conditions with unreasonable deadlines and little resources. As sad as it is, even the well-known and highly respected contractors still get this kind of treatment. And it's not exclusive to the video game industry. They are regularly screwed over in the film and television sector too. Visual effects artists on big blockbusters are crunched so badly they sleep in their offices for days at a time. Voice actors sometimes get as little as $150 for the entirety of their work on popular franchises.
It's horrible.
Sadly, another high-profile victim of this poor treatment of freelancers has now arisen, and it starts a few years back. On May 4th, 2020, Marty Stratton, the studio director of id Software, as well as the executive producer of Doom Eternal, made
Wait, do you guys say id? id Software? I genuinely thought it was ID Software.
Post on the Doom subreddit titled Doom Eternal OST Open Letter. This open letter was in response to an ongoing discussion among the community regarding the state of the game's original soundtrack, which many had deemed to be a noticeable step down in quality due to the fact that the composer for the soundtrack, Mick Gordon, who also composed the score for Doom 2016, was able to edit and mix only 12 of the 59 existing tracks, and the remainder had to be completed by the studio's own lead audio designer, Chad Mossholder. Marty's post is fairly long, but the gist of it is that he was attempting to dispel any rumors that it was id Software who was at fault by not giving Mick enough time or freedom to deliver on his end of the agreement. Marty states that he was surprised by Mick doubting they would ever work again, and that Mick had near limitless creative autonomy on the project. He asserts that Mick's failure to deliver the final product was entirely his own fault, especially considering that id even gave him a 6-week deadline extension. Marty says that as the deadline drew closer, it was Mick himself who suggested that his and Chad's work be combined into a more comprehensive release, and that Chad's work could be fleshed out more if a heavier sound was needed.
Ego. Super ego. Id or id? So is he just like straight up lying?
Marty then says that even though Mick signed off on all this, he ended up being publicly disapproving of how the soundtrack was handled. Basically, Marty spends the entire post painting Mick as the one who was unprofessional, unreliable, and two-faced. But was it true? Unfortunately, Mick never really released a direct response, and a fair amount of people took Marty's word at face value. It was pretty easy to do because an executive going out of their way to directly speak to the fans on a fan-run forum seemed like a gesture of goodwill, especially when it directly addressed the frustration surrounding the release of the anticipated soundtrack.
Wait. He's gonna be like He's gonna be like Dave, the priest.
So a sizable chunk of the community went forward under the impression that it was Mick Gordon who burned the bridge between himself and id Software. Until November 9th, 2022, 2.5 years after Marty's post, Mick Gordon finally broke his silence. Hosted on Medium and announced through Twitter, he dropped a nuke of a reply. A very lengthy tell-all article that featured a ton of receipts. Including screenshots of emails that Mick actually sent. And when I say lengthy, I mean lengthy. I can't really even bother to read it all to you word by word in this video unless I wanted the video to be an hour and a half long or more. I did a quick and dirty word count by copying and pasting the whole thing into a word processor, and apparently it's damn near 15,000 in length. About 6 times longer than Marty Stratton's open letter.
Hell yeah, that's when you know they're telling the truth.
I do recommend reading it yourself if you have the time and patience for it.
I will,
but for
in my
now,
own time,
I will go over all the key points in the same order as the article presents them. Right off the bat, Mick states that id handed him a schedule that required him to score 2 levels per month, which he says is a tight deadline, but not.
What? Can you imagine? It's like locking up an artist and being like, do this fast with like a gun to their head.
Not impossible. But the real problem was how quickly this schedule became disconnected with the actual development pipeline of the game. Because the game was still 2 years away from release, and little to no gameplay was finished, Mick basically had to score the game using scant information about the combat, pace, and world, and his own imagination. Mick suggested a pretty reasonable solution to these problems. Focus on a general musical identity for the game before going into specific themes, and eliminate the 2 levels per month requirement for more flexibility. Seemed pretty easy, but Marty struck it down. And Mick said,
and the soundtrack still kicks ass. So he's like, oh, you're giving me an impossible deadline. I guess I can do it. Let me think of some workarounds so I'm able to do this. And he's like, no.
as he struck it down quite rudely and aggressively. Thus, Mick had to press on with guesswork, a lot of which...
Is Marty like a failed music producer, or is he like jealous? Let's see.
Ended up not fitting the game as it progressed in development, so more and more of his work had to be thrown out as the weeks passed.
No!
And it became clear that whoever decided on the music budget also did not understand or anticipate the actual scope of the game.
Oh my god, release the Mick Gordon cut. Like, you know, like the Zack Snyder cut or like Justin Baldoni. Release the Mick Gordon cut. Like, let's get all of the scrapped music and we can support him. He can make money off of it. Hey, Clapped. We're reacting to the mistreatment of Mick Gordon, a freelancer's worst nightmare.
Mick had to crunch more and more as the deadline drew closer, and any attempts at communicating with id ended in failure. He was left out of meetings, his emails and calls were ignored, and calls with the audio team were taken over by managers who were in a panic. But it only gets worse from there. id Software attempted to deny Mick any payment for his work as often as they could, under the notion that they just didn't like what he was making.
Threw out 2 entire suites written for Super Gore Nest and Mars Core, which Mars Core was so good. I mean, both were so good. Why? Oh, so they threw those out. But why? Just because? I can't see him making a bad song.
At one point, Mick went 11 straight months without being paid for any of the work he had done in that time.
How's he supposed to live?
Beginning in January 2019. And on top of that, his crunching was so bad, he would spend days at a time at his studio, away from family, living off of microwaved food. And still, it gets worse. On June 6, 2019, at Bethesda's E3 presentation, Doom Eternal was given its initial release date of November 22nd of that same year. And with that announcement was the reveal of a collector's edition that included a copy of Mick Gordon's original Doom Eternal soundtrack.
What?
This was a problem because he had been working only on in-game music, so this soundtrack did not yet exist and was nowhere close to even beginning to exist.
What the... What? My god, I hate business people like this. I hate them. Truly, get AI. Get AI. See how that goes for you. See how that fucking goes for you, you normie, bitch-ass, untalented freaks!
And as the cherry on top, this live presentation was the first time Mick was hearing about the existence of this OST. Mick was willing to produce this OST, but needed a contract in order to do so. But Marty apparently refused to draw one up.
What?
This put Mick in a tough position because even though he wasn't in a spot to facilitate the creation of this OST, his name was already tied to it, and the public would blame him if this OST was never released. Time pressed on, and Mick continued to work in spite of being ignored and exhausted. He says he contemplated quitting, but found himself believing that he would lose more by quitting now than he would gain if he finished the project. The game was inevitably delayed to March 2020, and while this might have seemed like a potential blessing for Mick, it only led him to being strung along even more. He had finally become fed up enough to threaten to leave the project after 10 months of no pay, but had to...
According to them, I was the one being difficult. The word they used was ball ache. Oh my fucking god.
To play ball because he couldn't afford a legal battle against ZeniMax. Finally, he received his pay at the end of November 2019, which meant his contract had been fulfilled and his role in the project had ended. The in-game music was finished, but of course this was after 2 straight years of rigid schedules, constant crunching, producing guesswork that got thrown out, and
And
little
it
to no
sounds
communication from
amazing, and he
id.
did
In spite
that
of everything,
on
Mick
No
held
Sleep.
fast and stayed with the project until the end, and the game would launch to critical acclaim and financial success. However, the problems still didn't go away. Mick soon noticed that all of the music he produced during the project, nearly 5 hours worth, was being used in the game, but he was only paid for half of it. This was a tough spot, because placement of that music within the game was the job of the lead audio designer, Chad. And once Mick sends the files over, it was the audio team's job to decide what they would do with them. This extra 2.5 hours of music contained rejected tracks, mock-ups, and demos that Mick was under the impression would end up not being used, but were eventually put in the game and in marketing material anyway, and id Software.
What? Hi, Una. Excuse me? And it's clear he has receipts.
Did not pay him for it. Mick wanted to begin work on the OST, but Marty continued to ignore his requests for a new contract to be written up, forcing him to skip over id entirely and talk to Bethesda instead. This opened up another can of worms because
What?
apparently Mick was still owed money from a totally separate OST he
my
made for
God.
Bethesda back in 2015,
Oh!
which I assume is Wolfenstein. And Bethesda used this.
He did Wolfenstein's soundtrack. He did some stuff for that. I'm going to let Caleb know because he loves that game.
Fact to their advantage in this new contract for Doom Eternal's OST by saying that payment for that other OST would be consolidated into this new contract.
You can't
So
do...
now,
Isn't that illegal? Isn't that fucking illegal? You can't... Isn't that like some kind of legal... like definitely exploitation, but it's almost like... Not blackmailing, but... what's it called when you are like forcing, like you get this money if you also do the forget what it's called.
Had to go along with it in order to get his rightfully owed pay for two OSTs.
God. Like
So negotiations for the Doom
maybe.
Eternal OST began, and Mick proposed 30 tracks totaling at over 2 hours in length, comparable to Doom 2016's OST. This was shot down immediately because it was clear there wasn't enough time or money to cover a project of that size.
Not enough money. Not enough money. Your 17th version of Skyrim Special Edition isn't covering it? What?
Marty claimed in the open letter that this suggestion was agreed upon, wording it in a way that made him seem generous by allowing Mick an extension. That was a total lie. Thus, Bethesda wrote up a draft for the contract. It stated that Mick had to produce 12 tracks for the OST, that id Software had final approval for the track list, that the contract would include payment for the 2015 OST he was owed money for, and that the deadline for Doom Eternal's OST was April 16th, but was flexible if need be. This seems all well and good until March 11th came around and a delay for the OST was announced, because Mick still had not received the final draft for this contract. Work for the OST began, but suddenly, Marty sent a frantic email stating that the April 16th deadline was now a necessity, because consumer protection laws...
Marty, get your shit together. Get your shit together. And don't fucking put it on the artist, Marty.
In certain territories
Marty
meant consumers who pre-order the collector's edition were entitled to a full refund if the OST was not out by April 20th. Mick realized this was a threat and that he would be held...
Yes, threat. That is a great way to fucking put it. Marty was saying, in his view, I was legally liable for any loss id Software suffered due to the customers claiming refunds over a late OST.
legally liable if the OST was late. He says that if he knew of these consumer protection laws, he would never have agreed to do the OST at all. But Marty had a backup plan, and it did not involve Mick. Marty said that he already had the lead audio designer, Chad, make a quick and dirty alternative OST by cutting and editing together snippets of the in-game score. And creation of this alternative OST began 6 months prior, meaning that Marty was secretly working against Mick the entire time. Marty claimed in...
Oh my god, Chad. Chad. Don't you feel bad, Chad. That's not solidarity. I know you're not the main villain, but oh my God.
In his open letter that bringing in Chad was a last-minute decision, basically as a safety net. But
No.
the very metadata within the files that Chad sent Mick suggest that creation of this other OST began all the way back.
Why do they announce it too early? Just to like get people excited? Like, why do you announce it when shit isn't ready? Why?
In August 2019. The deadline was close, and Mick had to face reality. It was no longer feasible to create a good product anymore,
Just to
because
get people
Chad's
excited,
slapdash
get the
edits
pre-order
were not
money.
OST quality, and it was obvious fans would notice.
Yeah.
Now, Mick had to focus on preparing for potential repercussions. Mick focused on fulfilling his contract, 12 tracks for the remaining 8 days.
It's like torture.
Again, he crunched 18 to 20-hour days and slept beneath his desk at the
No! How do you even make art? How do you make art? Easter?
studio. With literally a few hours remaining, Mick sends 10 songs over, and Marty interfered, suddenly explaining that he did not want these 10 songs, but different ones instead. He had
Marty, if I see you, when I see you, let's just say you don't want to see me.
had been uncooperative and absent this entire time, and now, at the last moment, he wants to give direction. Marty vetoed Mick's OST and said they would go with Chad's version. Mick couldn't do anything about it as he's merely a contractor.
What the
Mick
fuck?
confirmed with id that he had
What
met his
an
contractual
evil
obligations,
villain.
and probably the only silver lining in this tale finally happens. He was paid the full contract amount plus an on-time bonus without dispute.
Okay.
Mick was never allowed to listen to the OST before it was released, but when it was, he eventually had the time, and lo and behold, it was awful. It was full of shoddy edits, poor synchronization, technical mistakes, timing errors, the works. To say that it was a quick and dirty hack job would be kind. What was extra frustrating to Mick was seeing Chad being credited alongside him as co-artist.
I would be so mad. I would fucking be so mad. If anything, at least he got, like, no. I'm not going to say that. Because honestly, artists deserve to be medicated, well rested, well fed. That's when they make the best art, not when they're tortured. But if there's any silver lining along with the money, it's that this would make me so rage filled. I might make maybe an even more angry metal song. But it doesn't even matter because he deserves to be fed and like paid. Oh my god.
Chad played no part in
Chad,
actually creating
not
any of
his name being Chad.
this music, yet was given the same level of importance as Mick anyway. A particularly bad example is track 59, Final Sin, Sandy City. Mick says that this was a demo file rejected by Chad himself, yet placed in the OST with Chad's name right next to it. The OST released to harsh reactions from fans, and Mick, despite being screwed over, still felt guilty over its quality. And Marty, in an act of confounding narcissism, emailed Mick to ask why he wasn't giving public support for the OST. Marty insisted he wanted
no fucking way, dude. Hey, why aren't you happy? Why aren't you happy that we released a subpar score with you and this guy named Chad that we made you crunch for and lose sleep and family time and years of your life? Be happy. Smile. What? Oh my God.
a positive outcome for all involved, but the following Skype call between them had him on a warpath. Marty was jumping to the conclusion that Mick's firmness on this matter was some sort of attack.
I want to get him fired.
Mick pointed out that the OST was announced without his involvement and that he was not told of the looming consumer protection laws until 13 days before the OST was supposed to launch. Marty defended his decision.
Wait. I need to read this part. He grew suspicious and convinced himself the act of me explaining the problems was some sort of diabolical scheme to sow disunity and division. He jumped to the conclusion that I was initiating an attack. Wait, this is like Blake Lively. If anyone's been keeping up with the Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds versus like Justin Baldoni, that's exactly what they did. And they like counterattacked with like illegal shit, in my opinion. and false stuff. And I don't think like these people think that everything's a battle and it's a war, and like it's so narcissistic, like big ego but insecure, diabolical scheme. Like he's just trying to make art. Oh my god, that sounds great, Clapped. Oh my god.
Until 13
I would
days
love that.
before the OST was supposed to launch. Marty
Chad,
defended his decision.
Wait, what was Chad? He tried to bring Chad into the call for support, but he couldn't be reached. And it occurred to me that Marty didn't really understand the issues and was trying to argue based on. So Chad, get in the call. Chad, stop holding Moss. Come on, take a break from holding Moss, Chad.
Until 13 days before the OST was supposed to launch.
Don't be a Chad.
Marty
okay?
defended his decision to ignore Mick and keep him in the dark by saying this was some sort of comeuppance for Mick not
trying to protect all of us. Because I had not fallen in line, I was on my own. As soon as people come after us, we come after you. Is Mick Gordon Doom Guy? Hey, quick question. Is Mick Gordon the Doom Slayer? Period.
falling in line, and that as soon as people come after us, we come after you.
Wait, he worked on is Prey 2017 the movie? No. That's it's a game.
Pretty brazen threat if there ever was one.
Yes.
This call ended up being an hour of Marty raging and chastising Mick for things the latter had no control over. But it ended with one agreement. That both...
Hilarious that the call was an hour when they could have just been, like, making stuff. He just wanted to, like, yell at him for an hour when they could have been working on things and sleeping.
Men would make a joint statement together in order to control the growing inferno
or a voice
of fan
note or a
frustration.
journal entry.
Marty asked Mick to not say anything publicly until the time was right, and Mick complied. However, in an ugly, deceptive, two-faced move, Marty instead went on the Doom subreddit to post that open letter and dump all the blame onto Mick's lap without so much as a heads up. Mick states that the open letter was stuffed
particularly considering his outstanding contributions to the game. You don't know what talent is. I feel it is my responsibility to respond on their behalf. This is literally Dea Grav or whatever his name is. He's like the priest. I'm compelled to present the entire story. Okay, motherfucker.
To the brim with lies. And that Marty knew enough about Reddit and how the site worked to know that this open letter would be seen by many, many people in a short amount of time.
Bitch.
Mick decided that enough was enough, and he finally brought in lawyers who contacted ZeniMax directly. ZeniMax tried to defend themselves, but Mick countered by plainly stating that Marty's allegations were in fact in direct contradiction with the contract Mick legally completed, and that id Software breached that contract by using twice as much music as they paid for. ZeniMax quickly buckled and tried to settle, but the settlement was insulting, to say the least. ZeniMax supposedly proposed...
Instantly, like that quick of a settlement. You're not even playing the game. You are guilty, motherfucker. You are guilty, and your lawyers and whatever, they know it. They know you're guilty as fuck. If you have all the receipts, they try to settle that quickly. Oh, fuck you.
It was a deal where they would pay what they owe, and in return, Mick makes a new, polished version of the Doom Eternal OST. Basically, ZeniMax acted as if they were generous for offering to pay for music they essentially stole, and...
Okay, you can get what you were originally owed. Okay, settle down, everyone. Settle down. Let go of the moss.
Having Mick work for them even longer on a project he should have had total control over at the very start. A shocking, disgusting lack of accountability here. Then another settlement was made, in which Mick would receive a six-figure sum, and in exchange, Marty would never have to delete his open letter.
This is horrifying, but if anything, I know that Mick, like, it probably like bothers him, of course, but he knows he's a good person and he's a hard worker and he deserves payment, so he can sleep like a baby now that he can sleep. it does bring me satisfaction to know that Marty is like going over and over in his head. What do they think of me? I can't delete the post. I can't. No, you can't say bad things about me. So he probably sleeps like shit.
Loaded with lies, and Mick would never be allowed to talk
No
about
comment.
the OST situation or publicly criticize any ZeniMax product for life. Basically, ZeniMax
Give me $5 billion for that. I don't think there's, I don't know. I really can't think, even if someone offered me 6 figures, I'm so stubborn. I could not just like be silenced and not tell the truth. I love yapping. I love shitting on people. I could not be drowned by an NDA like that. I wouldn't. Oh, I can't. Oh my God. So what? You said
was
no?
offering a wad of cash for Mick to take
But
all
it's
the
hard
blame.
because he has a family. Like, I don't have kids. I think it sounded like he had a kid, right? I don't think Caleb would want me to take that money, but it's just a hard decision to put someone in because you could just like take the money and just retire essentially. It's I don't know,
and
it's hard.
reputation damage until his dying day. Again, insulting.
Yes.
Mick was already seeing harassment from fans online who were successfully misled by Marty's open letter, and he decided to offer a final settlement. That ZeniMax pay him for the extra music used in Doom Eternal. Marty takes down the open letter, and in exchange, Mick will produce a better OST. It was the most reasonable and fair counteroffer Mick could have made. In fact, it was probably too nice.
Yeah.
Anyone with slightly more spite in them would have rather died than offer more work.
Yeah.
But this reasonable offer was met with stalling, and the wait for a response dragged on.
That is so like that. He's just like, please just let me do a good job. I want to cry. Like, let me do it my way. And it's like for us, and it's for the fans, and it's for the integrity of the work. Oh my God.
Dawn. Then Mick decided to take the open letter situation into his own hands by personally contacting one of the moderators of the subreddit, who thankfully complied with Mick's request to remove the post. But 12 hours later, the post was back up. The mod blocked Mick, and Mick was given a prompt message from Marty's lawyers that Marty was greatly offended by the removal, and that now an amicable resolution was impossible.
How dare you take down my post of lies? This man is insane. This Marty needs to be locked up. He needs to be locked up. That is a psychopath. What the fuck?
Again, Marty displays no desire to respond to Mick unless it's an opportunity to make Mick look worse.
Full of
Marty
lies
tries to paint
post.
Mick as the one who burned the bridge that could have led to a positive.
This is like worse than teenage girl shit. I have not seen this level of like all this energy you're spending on like how do people see me? How do people see me? And like believe the lies. The truth always comes out. I hope that everyone realizes that. You cannot pay, like, look at Harvey Weinstein, like, look at all these fucking people that try to pay their way into creating a false narrative. It doesn't work. With karma, with just overall, you cannot buy your way into lies, no matter how long it takes. Even if it takes decades, the truth will come out.
Outcome.
Emasculated men can be a lot more intense than teenage girls. And mic drop. And you know who's not an emasculated man? Mick fucking Gordon, aka the true Doomslayer. Has anyone done art of him in I want to do it with his tattoos and stuff, like in the Doomslayer armor? Oh my God, I think I could do it. I just haven't done digital art in a while.
All know now that that bridge never existed to begin with. This put Mick in the position he is in now, making a public response, because it's really the only way to get any semblance of closure that doesn't result in him getting screwed over more. He iterates that he generally loves his career and the relationships he's formed and work he's created throughout, and that he never quit Doom. He only quit a toxic client.
He does not owe us that. That's so... By all means, he could and should hate this game and be like triggered by it and just want out completely, but he still loves it and loves his work and loves us.
This is definitely apparent in his consistent willingness to go back and fix the Doom Eternal OST, even after all of this stuff has happened.
No.
The next section of Mick's statement is a direct rebuttal of Marty's open letter, bit by bit. It re-emphasizes stuff we've already went over in the main body of the article, but the specific points raised against Marty's words are: 1. Doom Eternal's OST was poorly managed from the outset, with Mick not even being contracted for it when it was announced. 2. The OST was delayed before Mick was under contract, and thus Mick is not to blame for any delays because he technically wasn't yet hired to make it. 3. The deadline for the OST was not in January like Marty states, but rather in March, and Mick was only contracted for 12 songs, not 30 songs, which was Mick's suggestion, but was ultimately refused.
Period.
4. Mick was paid for fulfilling his contract, so accusations of unprofessionalism on his part would make little sense because it would have been grounds for id, Bethesda, and ZeniMax to refuse payment. 5. id Software was already working on an alternative OST for months before Mick was contracted, meaning Marty's claims that Chad was brought on at the last minute are false.
Do we know how much Chad was paid? Like, was he also... I don't think he was crunching because he had the same amount of time to do the same... Well, I don't know. I'm just interested. And I wonder if he's responded. He probably can't because of contracts.
6. Marty doesn't seem to understand the mastering process as he blames the OST's poor...
Marty says that Chad, apparently working in a hurry, just answered my question. Only had my supposed Brickton game score to work with. Oh, no. This was what he claimed.
Quality on Mick instead of Chad, even though id themselves approved all of Mick's in-game scores.
Wait. Okay, he's saying Chad is not good. Okay, so he's saying it's not just like you can learn, bro. Like you can get better, but I don't know. Like I think he maybe got like a cheaper audio engineer or something. And yeah, and probably like wanted to hover and like tell him what to do, and it was like I wonder how much of it he tried to like kind of do himself, like okay, put some time, do a little cool time signature here, change, yeah
instead of Chad, even though id themselves approved all of Mick's in-game scores.
BOGO coupon.
7. The problems with the OST's quality were obvious immediately because Mick was receiving questions.
Heavily compressed mixes were then thrown together and had their combined master volume lowered. Oh. The instruments are fighting each other. Okay.
About it the moment
it's like such things I didn't think about, especially with 2016, because everything just flowed. I don't consider that. Like when I'm streaming a game or recording, I will have to like mess with the audio if it's not mixed correctly. And if you have a good fucking audio engineer, lead audio designer, you don't have to worry about that. They really took him for granted, to say the least.
So him clarifying that he did little work on it was not some sort of war declaration on id like Marty
he's just
pretends
telling
it is.
Truth.
8. Mick stated that he would probably never work with id again because, well, Marty treated him like shit the entire time, which makes Marty pretending to be blindsided by that comment pretty disgusting.
Yep.
Furthermore, Mick adds that he dislikes Chad being credited as an artist not only because he didn't make any of the music, but because id also refused to let Mick credit his own longtime collaborators who actually did contribute to the score.
Oh, that sucks. What? So, like, he got people to help him out and they can't be listed, but fucking Chad Mossholder. That's it, right? Mossholder? Like, they collaborated. Fucking Chad? Are you embarrassed, Chad? I would be so embarrassed.
Plus, to this day, Mick has never personally received any award given to Doom Eternal's score. He's only ever seen them behind a glass case from a distance. And Marty himself was enough of a douchebag to collect some of those awards himself. And 9.
No. Give those to him right now. Or else. This video is going to get taken down. He's going to sue me. He's going to try to get on a Discord call with me and be like, how dare you lead a harassment campaign, MegMage? How dare you? I dare you to get on a fucking Discord call with me. I dare you, Marty. Add Chad in there if you want.
Mick says the most hurtful lie Marty made was the suggestion that Mick's alleged unprofessionalism led to the harassment of an id employee, even though Chad was brought in by Marty himself without Mick's knowledge, and Marty highlighted Chad's involvement himself in the open letter. And that pretty much concludes Mick's statement. There's still some smaller details I didn't go into for the sake of brevity, but I suggest you read
Sybil.
the whole thing
How you
yourself
doing?
if you have the time and
I
patience
really
for it.
will.
If I read through the whole thing word for word, then this video would probably end up being an hour or so long, which would defeat the purpose of it being a more digestible summary.
Okay, well,
The
now you're just
situation
blabbing on,
surrounding
honey.
the Doom Eternal OST is an extremely complicated one that dates back years. And even though it took 2.5 years, Mick Gordon finally gave the full story, and it
So
is
what about the
damning.
DLCs? Did
It
he do
shows
the
that
DLCs?
not only was he actually not to blame for the album's poor
Exactly,
quality,
clap.
but the person who first pointed the finger at him publicly, Marty Stratton, is the one responsible not only for the dismal condition of the final product, but also for the heinous mistreatment of Mick himself for pretty much the entire time he was working on the game. Mick was brought on for in-game music without any finished levels to draw inspiration from,
excited to
requiring
listen
a
to
ton
the
of guesswork
DLC
that was
music.
thrown out. He was
Chad.
announced to be making an original soundtrack that he wasn't contracted for yet. He was ignored every single time he tried to communicate with id management. He was forced to crunch 18 to 20-hour days constantly to meet ridiculous deadlines and had to sleep in his studio for days at a time and live off microwaved food. He went as long as 11 straight months without being paid for any of the work he did in that time. He went unpaid for an extra 2.5 hours worth of music that was used in the game and marketing material, even though he was contracted for half of that. He was being secretly ousted as the OST producer by Marty bringing in Chad without any notification. He was straight up libeled by Marty in the open letter on Reddit, and every attempt at a settlement was met with a demeaning counteroffer that didn't have any closure to the ordeal. Mick did not take a six-figure sum to keep his mouth shut. He decided
I'm
to
so
come forward
proud
with
of
the
you,
truth.
Mick.
After reading everything, it's almost impossible to truly grasp how insanely mistreated Mick was for months on end. It's incredible he waited a whole 2.5 years to make a response. Anyone with less patience would have probably tried to make the statement immediately, but I imagine Mick wrote this with the help of legal counsel.
Yeah,
This entire story
exactly.
is a
He wanted to be
freelancer's worst
really
fucking
careful.
nightmare. Every conceivably realistic worry a music contractor would have about a project came to life during Mick Gordon's time working
Is
on
Chad
Doom
for
Eternal.
Dark Ages?
It's beyond the
Not
pale.
Chad.
The horrible planning, the malicious silent treatment, the terrible crunching,
Yep.
the cruel refusal of payment, the shameless
Narcissist.
character assassination, and the
Narcissist.
total squandering of creative talent. It's all here. It's almost awe-inspiring with how much rage it can draw out of you. It's completely fucking abhorrent and unacceptable.
I think Argles, I think it comes with him not I think that businessmen are like threatened by true artists, and they always try to take advantage, and if you don't fall in line they get very upset. Those types of businessmen, at least. And I see it a lot. I mean, I had to fight to get my to get payment for something. It took like 8 months, and I had to get very real and like threaten legal action. They just were not paying me for a sponsorship. And it wasn't until I threatened legal action that they actually did pay me. The contract didn't even matter in their case because it had gone past the deadline for them to pay me. And I'm not like an artist, I'm a content creator, but still I can relate in that I'm a freelancer, and sometimes I do have to work for clients with like the sponsorships. And there is like throughout the industry this gross misunderstanding where they don't understand how long it takes or even how much they can and should give people. If I'm editing, filming, writing, scripting, like there's a lot that goes into it. And that is not a game score. That's just like filming an ad. And I do have to face like being underpaid, and it's not even comparable to this where it's like true art. So I just think it's a nasty pattern.
And it's also totally baffling that Marty would attempt this nonsense with someone as famous and respected as Mick, who was able to continue finding work within and without the video game industry.
It's like an ego thing too. It's like, let me like put this person down.
Even after Marty tried to ruin his reputation. But either way, in this particular circumstance, Mick was just another victim of unnecessary corporate hostility and awful management.
Yep.
The specific thing that pisses me off personally is
Yes.
Marty's unrelenting narcissism throughout this whole thing.
Thank you.
It seems
Hell
he
yeah.
never once bothered to communicate with Mick unless it was an opportunity to ruin his work. Every single attempt Mick made at peacefully remedying this situation was flipped
like he
by
wanted
Marty
this.
into a perceived
Well,
attack.
there are people that they thrive in chaos and they like it because they're deeply unhappy within themselves, and so they want to make others unhappy and they want to take them down a peg. Like, we all know people like that. It's like they eat your emotional energy. They eat chaos. They're addicted to chaos. Like, this is just, it's not new, and we know people like that. But then imagine giving them so much power over others. That's when they need to be removed, or at least taken down a peg, which it pisses me off that he's not removed from id Software. Like, I want to protest. I don't know how.
Even though Marty never seemed to speak to Mick in good faith to begin with. It was fucking agonizing
that's
for
a
me
good
to
theory,
read Mick's
Tori.
recollection of Marty blaming him for ruining settlement negotiations by asking Reddit mods to take the libelous open letter down. Marty went out of his way to avoid peace talks, but then proceeded to paint the victim of the situation as a perpetrator when he did the only thing he could feasibly do to save his reputation from false accusations. If there's any single individual who should get blame here, it's Marty Stratton. He is the studio director at id. He had every opportunity to simply not be a piece of shit.
How could he get fired? Who's above him? I don't know if he could get fired or
Mick.
demoted.
And again, I understand why some people believed his open letter at first.
Yeah,
It was an executive going
convincing.
straight to the community to address a controversy. It seemed like a level of transparency that isn't
calculated.
normally given, so it was
Yeah.
appreciated and thus taken at face value. But let this be a lesson to us all.
Todd!
Never take
Todd! Todd, Howard, please. Todd, please. Please fire him. Todd, God, Howard, you've never done anything wrong in your whole life. Please. Get rid of him. Please, Todd. Please, Todd. Come on,
executive's
Todd.
words at face value. I've also seen some fingers pointed over at Chad Mossholder.
Now
But
I
I don't see
really
any reason
want
to
it.
believe, at least at the moment,
Yeah, I
that he
don't
was
think-
acting maliciously against
No,
him.
I don't think Chad. I don't think Chad was acting maliciously. I think he was just like used almost as like a demon or something in the game. Todd, please, God, Howard, please. Who's laughing now, Todd? No one. We're not laughing at you. We loved Indiana Jones. I need to finish it. Please do what you need to do.
Mick, like Marty was, Chad might have just been doing his job.
Coming tomorrow. But I
Yay!
also ordered a DVD of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Great.
So I figure why not?
Yeah, why not? Physical media is great.
Overall, this whole situation is just a complete shitstorm that was sadly aimed at one man. I hope Mick gets the closure he deserves, and he's able to truly go back and,
And if
polish
not,
that
rip and
Doom
tear
Eternal OST
until
on
it
his
is done.
terms and at his pace.
We can be his
If
sentinel
anything,
guards.
this
we
whole
can
story
offer
serves
him
as a very
tokens,
sobering reminder
coins.
to everyone
Yep.
that if you are a freelancer who
Yep.
makes your living contract by contract,
Yep.
you could be one bad client away
Yep.
from your entire career falling out from under you.
Yes.
This
Mm-hmm.
concludes my summary and thoughts on the matter.
That's why I don't. Wow. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.
That's why it's really hard, but I'm really glad I'm my own boss, and I don't like accepting a lot of sponsorships. I really don't. I don't like this shit. I don't like it. I don't like working with middlemen and like people who don't understand what it takes to be natural with like an ad or like be bless him.